Okay, everyone, welcome to the disability meeting for December 2016. Let's make our introductions to the record.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rosemary Tabelis, designee for Police Commissioner.
Samantha Gagan, counsel, NYPD organization.
John Dorsey, designee for Controller Scott M. Stringer.
Antonio Rodriguez, designee for Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Leanne Leon, designee for Finance Commissioner Jihad.
Brian Berge, Law Department, present by invitation.
Joe Alejandro, designee for Patrick Lynch, John Puglisi, Mubarak Abdul-Jabbar. Chris McGrath, PBA, present by invitation.
Corey Grable, PBA, Chairman of the Board.
Mark Marino, PBA, by invitation.
Gary DeRosa, alternate designee, Ed Mullins, SBA.
Bob Ganley, SBA, designee for Ed Mullins.
Nick Sifuni as counsel for the SBA, LBA, CEA by invitation.
Steve Rubilia, LBA, designee for Luke.
Chris Monahan, CEA designee Roy Richter.
Michael Palladino.
Kenny Sparks, DEA.
Kara Peck, DEA by invitation. Sherry Chansey, actuary, present by invitation.
Eli Kleiman, Chief Surgeon, by invitation.
Bob Saskistat, Pension Fund, by invitation.
Kevin Holleran, Pension Fund, by invitation.
Diane Carr, Pension Fund by invitation.
Therese Gallagher, Medical Division by invitation.
John Flynn, Police Pension Fund by invitation.
Nicole Jambrisi, Police Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Keith Snow, Office of the Actuary, present by invitation. Michael Jacobowitz, Police Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Mary Young, Police Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Angela Larry Williams, DEA, by invitation.
Pension Fund, present by invitation. Lisa Garcia, Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Taisha Wenham, Pension Fund, present by invitation.
Okay, Joe.
Okay. On the agenda, page 1, to confirm the next meeting date, Wednesday, January 11, 2017. Article 2, pages 2 through
16, nothing of a controversial nature, so moved.
Thank you, Kenny. So moved. Okay, request for re-examination of the safeguards provision of Administrative Code 13-254 for retired Detective Anthony Hernandez.
I'd like to move into take this out of public and have a discussion on it later.
Any executive?
Executive, yeah.
What's the reason for that?
Some things we would like to request.
Having to do with confidential medical information or what?
Yes.
Because this is a public matter, the safeguards being applied to a detective.
Right.
So yes, medical information?
Nothing, it's not medical information, it's something else.
There's an investigation. This has been put on the record because the chief of personnel indicated that an investigation was conducted.
Right.
And as a result of the investigation, we want to bring him back on the safeguards. So
right.
As a trustee, we would like to see the complete investigation file that the chief of personnel has on his case.
All right, well, let's come back to that then. All right. Well,
Public or executive?
Because we're going to be probably having another matter that we have to come back on.
Okay. Resolution, reversion of pensioners' benefit to the maximum retirement allowance.
This is ours. A member, Michael Davios, he's a retired detective. He sent a request to the Police Pension Fund asking to revert from option 3, which is the 50% additional, back to the maximum. When he retired, he was married and named his wife as the beneficiary. He was subsequently divorced. And seeks to avail himself of New York City Administrative Code 13-261.3. I have the judgment of divorce proving that they're divorced, and I have a copy of the stipulation of settlement where his former spouse very clearly waives her rights to his pension, and we are not paying anything out pursuant to a court-ordered domestic relations order. If anybody would like to view the packet, I have it.
I did view the package, and so move it.
Good guy.
Thank you.
That's right. Good guy, yes.
Okay. Resolution for Checkbook NYC.
Yes, as we do quarterly, we have the resolution for the Checkbook NYC, which is making available pension payroll information for staff of the Police Pension Fund on the Checkbook NYC database, which can be viewed through the Control's website. So we request a motion.
So I'd make a motion that we continue for quarter, Checkbook NYC.
Second.
Resolution Common Investment Meeting.
So you'll have, beginning on page 20, going all the way to page 22 in the public documents, is a resolution related to the common investment meeting. This is a semi-annual approval, or I should say, going forward, it will be a semi-annual approval. This is to have the police pension fund participate with the other New York City pension funds in a common meeting, but also maintains the integrity of the police pension fund as a singular individual entity by having caucuses that relate specifically to matters that relate to this board. So we will take any questions if there's any questions, but this is the resolution very similar to the one that was passed last year with the caveat of semi-annual improvement as opposed to annual improvement.
Was there also discussion about authority of the board to the controller to be voted on quarterly?
So, Joe, there is discussion of that, and I believe that there's an understanding that the delegation to the controller's office to act as the investment advisor of the fund will take place quarterly. However, I have just an administrative question. We pass in June of every year, starting July 1st until the next next June 30th. We usually pass it for 1 year intervals. I understand we'll be going to quarterly going forward. The question that I would have, and I think this is more of an administrative question, is whether or not at this moment you'd like to rescind the 1 year and institute the quarterly from January onward, if you will. I just don't know administratively how that is best to proceed. We have no issues with it moving to quarterly versus annually. We're proud of the job that we do for this board. I think I can speak on behalf of the Bureau of Asset Management when I say that they're proud of the job that they do for the police pension fund, and will continue to be proud of that job and put together a good product, whether it be on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. So it's the purview of the board how you'd like to proceed. But I don't have anything further to add. But I do want to point out that is separate and distinct from the
absolutely, from the resolution.
The common investment meeting. So may I suggest that we take a vote on the common investment meeting, and then if we'd like to entertain a motion to either rescind and re-enter into the delegation, we can do so immediately following the vote for the CIM.
So why don't we do a roll call vote on the resolution?
Okay, for the CIM.
For the CIM.
Thank you.
Changing it from annually to
semi-annually. So we'll bring it again in June, beginning in July for the end of the calendar year.
Okay, PBA,
Yes.
DEA,
Yes.
SBA,
Yes.
LBA,
Yes.
CEA,
Yes.
Police Commissioner,
Yes.
Finance,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
and the Controller.
Yes.
Okay. So moved.
Thank you.
Excellent job today, John.
I'm trying, Joe, I'm trying.
So on your second request, how would you like to proceed? Well, I mean, if you want to do it today, that's fine. If you want to think about how to proceed, and we can.
I think we should think about how to proceed for the next meeting, and then decide whether we're going to let it run till June 30th, or if we're going to change that for a period of time.
That's fine. And absent an action, it will continue. Absent any action, it'll continue till June 30th. However, we have the full understanding that may change at the next board meeting. So we thank the board for patience and how they want to handle that. So thank you.
But in either way, June 30th, there will be a new resolution.
Yes,
showing that it will be voted on quarterly.
Correct.
Thank you, John. And discussion regarding the purchase and credit for retroactive military seniority.
Joe, are you going to table that, or?
I believe. Do you want to discuss real quick your intent to review the matter?
So
You're gonna have to talk louder.
Joe's talked to me about the nature of the matter. Essentially, there are certain members who were not included in an administrative cleanup that DPF undertook with regard to retroactive military seniority and pension credit under USERA. I've been advised of the nature of the issue and we'll be looking into it. At the present time, I'd like to table the matter. If anyone has any further questions about it right now, feel free to ask. But otherwise, I'd like to table it for a month to look into it further.
Not unreasonable, given the complexity of the matter, and I think the law department wants to review it and come up with a carefully thought out solution to this. So, we'll table the matter for 1 month. Thank you, Brian. Okay. There is one more request by the PBA, and we would like to just hold off on that until later, and we can discuss a couple other matters that are still outstanding. So we'll second call that issue.
Okay.
Okay? And I would like to make a motion that we go into executive session for purposes of discussing disability cases. Okay? back on the record in public session. There were two matters that were second called. The first was resolution regarding reversion of pensioners' benefit to the maximum retirement allowance.
That was so moved.
Was it? No, I had second call.
That was
request
for
Safeguards.
Safeguards.
Yeah.
Safeguards.
Safeguards.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hernandez.
Right, there you go. Safeguards provision of administrative code for retired detective Anthony Hernandez.
Okay, yes, the DEA made a request for the investigative file, and we'd like to table that 1 month. We'll come back to you with that next month.
Okay, so that's tabled. And there's an outstanding matter regarding our request for actuarial information. And as I've said before, and I'll finish it up, my request on November 9th, 2016 for fiscal year 2014, 2015, 2016, and I believe to the extent that 2017 data has been promulgated, valuation data still stands. I request this information. I have done so without objection in the past. And I ask this in order to fulfill my duties and obligations as a fiduciary to the fund. So I'm just requesting of the executive director. I would like a copy of the information as I've done in the past.
Yeah, the mayor objects. In the past, the information has been provided pursuant to other means.
Speak up, please.
I'm sorry, in the past, the information been provided pursuant to other means, and I recommend that Officer Alejandro pursue those other means to try to obtain this information. Leave it at that.
I appreciate that, but as I've said in the past, I've gotten this information, simple request. I believe all trustees are entitled to the information in order to fulfill their obligations as fiduciaries. And I believe earlier this year, even the mayor's office allowed it without any problem, and in fact requested a copy of the information as part of the record. I believe there's no change in anything in law or process which will prevent me from having this information. So, as I said in the past, I've requested this with no problem. I would expect that I'm still entitled to this information and do so, request it.
And I want to make a note that the requested data earlier this year that this board voted on was the OPEB data.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Employment benefit. And the data that is being requested, I believe, is the pension data. So they're two separate files.
And that's what I'm asking for. That.
Okay. And I also want to say that there was some correspondence that suggested that the process has changed. Maybe that's what we were saying earlier. And I just want to clarify that when the data was requested last year, OA had sought that the board's consent be given before the data was released. And we did get confirmation that the Board of Trustees had consented to it, and therefore that's why it was released. I know that in your correspondence you said additionally that the General Counsel and the Executive Director had authorized it too, and I think we're in agreement with that. But the basis was that the Board of Trustees had consented to it. So there is no change in process, and I felt that the Board of Trustees should have consented to it because it is the police pension fund data.
And as I said before, as a fiduciary to the fund, in order to perform my duties as a fiduciary, I would like the information in order to review matters that come before the board for votes. And as I've said in the past, I've been entitled to it without a problem. I expect that there's no problem with this also.
You know, and I wanted to say additionally that because it was released previously with the Board of Trustees' consent, that if you are seeking the police pension fund data to request it from the police pension fund, I say this because of a couple of reasons. One is because that the data that does belong to police pension fund is not the OA's. And second, for transparency reasons and out of courtesy for the board of handling business, I think that it should be requested directly from PPF. And so there's no confusion in the future of who's releasing this data.
I appreciate that, and that's why I'm directing it to the executive director of the fund.
All right, so for purposes of the record, I think last time,
And by the way, if any trustee wants a copy of it, the same information, they're entitled to it. If they don't want a copy, they don't have to have a copy of it.
I think where we left off on this issue last time was an opinion was requested from the law department. So without getting into the details of the opinion, just for purposes of the record, I'll just say that the PBA put their request in writing in an email dated November 9th, 2016, 4:20 p.m. from Joe Alejandro. The law department responded by Brian Berge on November 15th, 2016 at 4:15 p.m. Then there was a reply to that from the PBA, Joe Alejandro, on December 8th, 2016 at 6:01 p.m. And then another reply from the law department, December 12th, 2016 at 1:41 p.m. And then again from the PBA, a reply to that, which was December 13th, 2016 at 4:37 p.m.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. So I expect that we'll get the files as soon as you can promulgate it.
Well, so I just want to note that the board has not provided its consent to provide those files, and I don't think that the executive director should provide those files without the consent of the board. So if you want to make a motion, Joe, to
So if you're looking for a vote
director-
on this, and we've not done so, a vote in the
Nothing to
past.
vote on.
There's not a vote on it, it's a
Trustees
request
have the
that
right
you're
to
entitled to,
information.
and
That's
the
it.
information any trustee's entitled to.
Well,
And if you're gonna deny trustees information, I don't expect that you'll be able to allow any trustee, including yourself, without all the information to guide you on any decisions that come before the board, especially with actuarial matters or any other valuations that come before the board. I don't know how you could do so and fulfill your fiduciary capacity, unless you are also getting information from other areas we don't know about.
I'm not getting information from other areas.
Okay.
I don't believe that the data that underlies the actuarial calculations that the Office of the Actuary makes on behalf of the police pension fund and the other pension funds in the city of New York are necessary for the board, the trustees, to carry out their fiduciary duty. I guess I would ask you, Joe, if we're having this conversation, are you committing to only using the information, if you were to get it, that you've requested for in your role as a trustee on the police pension fund board, and not in your role as an officer of the PBA?
We're not, John, we've had this conversation before. I'm asked to sit on this board on behalf of members of this fund, and we're asked to vote on matters that come before it from the actuary and from police pension fund. And in order to do that, I believe that it's necessary to review information. Some trustees may not want that information. We do. And I think it's important that we're able to access that information. To start now putting some sort of condition on information is to ask something that no one else has asked for here. I'm asked that if you're sitting here, do you use your information here in any other part of your duties as a mayor's representative on any other board or any aspect of the mayoral duties that you may be asked to do? No. And I don't think it's fair to ask any trustee that any information here they can't review in other contexts. We're sitting here, we're asking for this information as we've done in the past. There's been no problem. No one is saying I'm breaching my fiduciary duty in the past. And I think at the end, to now start trying to put some sort of condition on me, I think is unnecessary and I think is arbitrary and capricious.
Can I interject with a comment?
Well, I think the trustees need to address this first before we even get to the actuary.
That the information provided is accurate and consistent with my understanding.
I'm sorry?
I want to make sure that the information provided to the boards is accurate with my understanding. And you had said that this has been, like, you hadn't had the process, you had gotten the consent from the board to, for this information in the past. Is that
No,
what
it
you said?
said,
No, requested.
no.
There's
We
no
requested the
No
information.
consent.
There's no consent, it's
No,
requested.
No vote.
No vote.
And you had the board's consent in the past for this information.
What does that mean?
You don't need consent.
I'm trying to understand that,
What do you mean by consent? The vote?
I'm trying to understand what Joe had said.
I thought it was very clear.
Can you
I've
please say it again?
requested the information as a trustee on the board. I've gotten the information.
Okay,
Okay.
and so what I'm saying is, from the time that I've attended these board meetings, I have not seen it being requested to the board. And the
No.
clarification I
We've
want to
been
make is
sending
that
letters and emails since last January.
the OPEB data is different than the data that you're requesting right now.
No.
It is my
Evaluation
understanding.
data is the information that we request for police pension fund, and I believe they hand over that same data to you. In order for you to do your calculations, you've already gotten this information.
That's the OPEB
correct?
side. That's just the OPEB side.
Right. And so you get all this information.
But that's not the information you're seeking right now, is my understanding. Is that correct?
That is the same.
You're not asking for the OPEB data
You're asking for
alone,
the
you're
pension
asking
data.
for the pension valuation data.
That's
That
exactly.
we've been asking for since last
Yeah,
January.
it's all been there.
Same thing, emails, letters, since last January.
Okay, so why haven't you gotten it yet then?
No, we've gotten it. We're looking for update to the data of 2000, as I said, the recent years. We're updating the data.
The
That's
last time that you got the data, correct me if I'm wrong, you got it pursuant to an arbitrator's order between the arbitration between the city and the PBA. No, is that incorrect?
No.
Might I ask Mr. Holleran that question? Mr. Holleran, is it true that the last time that this information was provided, it was pursuant to an arbitrator's order?
No, because subsequent to that, there was a request at this table asking for this information.
The
We released it.
OPEB, right?
Yeah.
Not the pension valuation information. What was the circumstance under which the pension valuation information was last provided?
That was during arbitration.
Correct, pursuant to an arbitrator's order, right?
No, see, the issue here, right, is whatever information we've provided has been the same, no matter what the request was. So whether it was for,
OPEB or for this.
well, actually, that's a little different because that information was provided by the actuary's office. I don't know exactly what that information is, but we have provided even more information than that.
That's the pension data.
Right. So, Joe, I believe when you were asking in February, you were asking for whatever information we provide to the actuary.
Which is the
And that's
OPEB
what
data.
we provide.
That's the OPEB data.
So
Which is different.
Right, so the difference here is between the OPEB data and the pension valuation data. And the request here is for the pension valuation data, and it is my understanding that the last time that the police pension fund provided the pension valuation data to any trustee was pursuant to the arbitration. Isn't that correct? Maybe Nicole, you can answer the question.
that was, provided by the actuary's office by,
With the OA's understanding that the Board of Trustees consented to it, and additionally, I sought additional authorization from Executive Director and the General Counsel.
Right.
Yes.
it was mentioned that the board weighed in on this. I don't believe that the board did
That
weigh in on
was
this,
what the
but,
OA was informed.
okay. Well, we definitely viewed it and we saw it as an order and we provided that. We okayed
Understood.
the information being provided.
Understood, pursuant to an order. Right. Not an order from the board, an order from the arbitrator.
That's
Right, thank you.
So to the
So my
extent that
suggestion-
this data is our data, right? The one I'm asking for now, that the pension data is our data.
If
Correct.
the request is whatever we've provided to the actuary,
Right.
that's the request?
Right.
Yes,
It's our data.
yes.
We don't need to have a vote to review the data as trustees on the board. It's our data.
Quite honestly, I'm not sure the answer to that. Now, I know in the past when I provided it, there were no objections to it, but it wasn't a vote.
Right.
So,
A trustee can review the data as part of their fiduciary capacity, they're entitled to review the data. That can be utilized by the actuary or any other outside party to review this matter, correct?
Yeah, I would think so, but again,
I'm not asking for the Supreme Court decision here, but as trustees, we are on this board. We have certain authority on this board. We handle matters that come before this board. And to this extent that there is information that is provided by the beneficiaries of this fund, we're entitled to review data. To the extent that that data is utilized by the actuary or anything else, we can review that data.
But Joe, the problem I'm faced with, again, no one objected to it in the past, and now I'm faced with a situation that, to my knowledge, has never occurred, where a simple request like this is being objected to. So I think I can't commit to an answer right now. I'd like to review it and see how I have to proceed with this.
The only thing I would say is, as a matter of past practice, I think when trustees have asked for information, it's been forthcoming from this pension fund. And I think if someone can get up there and note their objection to someone having the information, I would like to understand why they want to object to it, because at the end of the day, I think we're being held to a different standard than anyone else is being held to. And as I said, why? Suddenly things are different. Okay? I would like to know why.
I think that the process hasn't been different.
Hold on. From my end, Joe, are you asking?
Yeah.
Again, I've never seen someone at this table object to this type of request. No one has been down this road. So I think it's important that I at least review it and try to figure out what my next step is.
So the question is, I guess, what changed from past practice?
So, to my knowledge, and keep in mind, I'm only on this board representing the mayor less than 2 years. So I put that out there, not pretending that I've been here for a long time. But to my knowledge, the last time the pension valuation data was requested, it was requested via arbitration in collective bargaining. And so, that's what Kevin and Nicole said, okay? Not the OPEB data. And if Joe is only asking for the OPEB data, I do not object to that being released.
I think what was released in the past was additional information, and maybe Nicole, you could shed light what was given in the past.
What was released was the pension data. It was released from my office, so.
It's a release for the actuary to review, to use that information that they already have.
We're not talking about the actuary. What we're talking about past practice of the same information, which I think is the same information. We might be calling it different names, but I think the information contained therein is the same.
But there's a distinction. I think there's a distinction, Chris, between the OPEB data and the pension valuation data.
I think
the information that's released from here is all the same. In fact, it's not released the second time.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's the same information.
It's the same information.
Same information. Separate things. So it's.
Let me just understand what you're saying. The information that was released earlier this year, that
by a simple request from the PBA trustee,
was the OPEB data.
Which is the same data.
It's not the OPEB data. It's the data that's used to do whatever calculations you have to do.
Pension valuation and OPEB valuation.
So it's the same data.
So I just want to understand. Can I ask you a question? Is it the same?
No.
No. So how is it different, Sherry?
There is information contained in the pension file that's used for pension valuation that is not relevant to OPEB and vice versa.
But you get it.
Hold on.
But you get it. You don't utilize it, but you get it.
I received both data files to run the valuation.
And that's my point.
And that's the same information that the police pension fund has forwarded to Joe in the past.
Right.
The PBA.
When you say in the past, I just want to be clear on that. Okay. So there was one release that took place.
February.
No, well, I was going to go back to the earlier one. Okay. So there was one release that took place pursuant to an arbitration.
That was
right?
May 2015.
In 2015. And that was the pension valuation data.
Correct.
Then there was a release that took place.
It's not a release.
What?
I can correct you, it's not a release.
What was it?
It's it's not a release of data. It's giving them a release that they can actually use the data for another purpose.
No.
Yes, it is.
No, the OA sent the data to PBA.
And
May I?
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
Okay.
Please.
So we have one data feed to the Office of the Actuary, and every fiscal year, we update that data file so that the Chief Actuary can perform a valuation. We're required by statute to provide this. We only do it once per year, so Sherry can complete the valuations. Every January, the Office of the Actuary comes to the board with the OPEB resolution, the other post-employment benefits, which is to value the health care. The Office of the Actuary has a statutory right to see our data feed to value the pensions. She does not have that right to use our data for other city purposes, so Sherry is asking the permission from the board to use our data to complete a valuation for another city agency. We don't see the OPEB data. It's my understanding that the Office of the Actuary scrubs the data somehow, does other valuations, and manipulates the data we've provided to perform a valuation for another city agency. The information that was released pursuant to the arbitration order was not released from this office. It was released from the Office of the Actuary, directly from John Gibney to the Law Office of Kay Scholler. What was released from this office in February of this year was we were specifically requested to provide all of the trustees with the data we provide the Office of the Actuary.
Right.
So we gave the entire valuation file to all of the trustees,
That's what we're
which
talking
is not the OPEB data. That's what Sherry uses to turn into the OPEB data.
Right.
Is that clear?
yes,
Okay.
It's the same data, in essence, it's just allowing her to work.
I'm trying to get you involved.
And as I said, we're looking for unique identifiers with that information. Information is not gonna go out,
you're
utilized.
excuse me, but I think you just misspoke. You're saying you're not looking for the unique identifiers, right? You just said you're looking for it.
Oh, yeah, we're not looking to have it de-identified, that's what we're looking.
So you without the unique identifiers, right?
Wait, say,
It's already de-identified, isn't it?
No.
No, she gets it with the data she has.
She gets it identified, we're looking for the unique identifiers on it.
I think that was your request.
Yeah, it's on there, with unique identifiers. Right.
Without them.
Without them.
Then what's unique identifier, which is like a way to.
I'm not looking to find out that it's Chris
But-
McGrath's, Chris Monahan.
Like a 1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
4,
yeah,
5,
yeah.
6, whatever,
That's
and
all.
it's constant.
Okay, so just so I can understand that.
It's on my request, if we want to read it into
That's
record.
not, I'm not really focused on unique identifier, I understand that. I want to ask Sherry, so I understand. So the information that you provided earlier this year, that you got,
I never provided any information earlier this year.
you didn't, so that was the,
Yeah.
that was the police pension
PPF
fund.
gives it to the actuary.
Huh?
No. Yes, but the information that was provided earlier this year was given by PBS. Yes.
So the information that you
All
gave
boards.
earlier this year, which nobody on the board objected to and a number of trustees agreed to and wanted the information for themselves, that was the same information you're saying that PBA is requesting now?
yes, right?
Yes.
And I
That's
just want
not
to
my
ask Sherry if that's correct.
Well,
That's not my understanding.
Okay, so
That
what's your
information was
understanding?
provided and subsequently PBA wanted pension information. This is why we're having the discussion right now.
No, but in February, they got the pension, basically in February, they got all the information that's usually given to you.
Fiscal year valuations.
But included in that information is the pension valuations.
There are
we don't do a
overlapping.
second feed. There's only one feed.
That's what we're saying. That's what we
We're saying
have.
it's the same information. You provided Joe, the PBA, in February with the same information that he's asking for today.
Yes.
And without objection, and also other trustees did ask to receive the information, some declined. So it's the same information, it's just, she uses that information to produce her report, which, now, going back was in the arbitrator, a couple of years ago, it was provided from the actuary. But the February was just basically a request by the PBA, and others who chose to receive it, others did not, is the same information that's being requested. And I'm just wondering what the difference is past
And I'm trying to understand that, okay? So Sherry, can you explain the difference between the data that PPF released in February, and I realize you didn't release it, but they're saying what they released in February, if I'm understanding this, is the same data that they provide to you. When do you provide that data, Nicole?
Vinny just went to get John Flynn. He's the one that actually completes the transmission. It's my understanding that it takes place sometime around June or July.
August, the beginning of August.
But the person who actually completes the transmission is going to come in.
Sherry may know too. Do you know when that data comes in?
The OPEB data.
No, not the OPEB data. The data
Pension
feed.
data comes in around the summer. Yes.
Because it's just.
And so, and the pension data that you just described, is that not what the OA has released in the past to the trustees? That's what so basically,
OA,
go ahead.
The OA released pension data to the law offices of, I don't remember.
Kay Scholler.
In May 2015.
Okay.
That was as a result of a subpoena.
That was, as you said, a joint request from the city and
Right.
PPA,
Right.
the attorneys for that.
Okay.
But the February request.
February request was for OPEB data.
And so I hear Chris saying, so I hear Chris saying that there's no difference between the
There's
data.
overlap in those two data files,
And
but
I think-
the OPEB file does not contain all the data that the pension file has, and the pension file does not contain all the data that the OPEB file has.
And what data,
I'm sorry,
what's the difference? Okay.
Hold on, we got
There's
Flynn here.
overlap in the pension and OPEB data files, but there's data in the pension file that's not in the OPEB file and
Right.
vice versa. But there is overlap.
Right, okay.
So
So
then
the-
the
Because it's
point
the same
that
people.
Chris made is actually not correct, that the two data files are
He's
not the
accurate
same.
in the sense that there is overlap. I mean, it's the same people we're talking about, but you need different data fields to value someone's pension versus someone's OPEB.
Right.
Off the record, I'm frequently not wrong.
As captains tend to believe.
So there's accuracy in what he's saying.
Off the
but it's
record,
not
I'm just trying to understand this.
I don't understand why I understand.
That's all right, you've only been here 2 years, 17, I'm still trying to figure it out.
All right, we're still on the record, reminder, so I have John Flynn here, and I think it would be helpful if John explains exactly what he does to release this data. John, sorry to put you on the spot, but.
Sure, no problem. Once a year, we meet with members of the Office of the Actuary. They request data for what we call the valuation process. It's a host of files, 4 main files that contain all demographic information about all of our active members, recently retired members, and members that are on payroll. Cumulatively, there's about 20 different subsets of files, but ultimately it's the full population of all of what we would say is our members. We release that as part of the valuation process to the Office of the Actuary. My understanding is that the OPEB release that happens in February, we don't release any additional information for that process. It's an authorization for them to use the data that we've already provided.
And which we've already got as at this board. That's not to you, John, that's the information that the PBA has gotten in the past.
You got in.
Right, without objection.
So that was, so
Just to
again,
clarify, there's additional information, because there's other agencies that provide us the OPEB data too.
And we'll get to that at another date when the PBA needs that information in another context. That's not what we're looking for right now. We're looking for the valuation data.
the pension valuation data.
Pension valuation
Right.
data for the fiscal years that I've already talked about.
And so has that pension valuation data been provided
To the PBA.
to the PBA
Without objection.
in the past, other than through the arbitration order?
As,
Not since my term.
well, wait
So
a
you're
second.
saying
No,
that the information, let me ask Kevin, because you didn't provide the information in February, that was provided by PPF.
Yes,
And so let me ask John, the information that was provided to the PBA and other interested trustees in February, is that when it took place?
February.
What information was that, John?
Was valuation data sets that were provided in previous years The only thing that was redacted were tax IDs and social security numbers.
So it's all the same information that you just described that you provide to the Office of the Actuary in the
Same
summer?
exact files, just replacing those identifiable pieces of information with unique identifiers so that you couldn't identify specific police officers.
Okay.
And that's all we're looking for is updated for the information that we got prior fiscal years, as I've said on the record.
Okay. All right, give me a minute, please. Can I have a minute?
I'll give you a minute. Take two.
Yeah, I saw this.
Okay.
Wait. Hey, Rosemary, can you step outside?
Can you cut the video?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. John?
Okay. When I look back at the minutes of the February 10th meeting from this year, it seems clear that all of us had a different understanding of the data, that there's repeated discussion about the OPEB data, and with an understanding that the OPEB data was different from the pension valuation data, which is how I came into this discussion today. I have learned today from the PPF and the actuary that in fact the data is the same data, but it's used for different purposes. And then when the actuary comes in to request PPF to the PPF that she be able to use the data to perform the OPEB calculations, she's not asking for different data. She's asking to be able to use the same data for the OPEB calculations. And in fact, when we look at this discussion from 2016, in fact, what Officer Alejandro asked for was access to the OPEB data, when in fact we learned today, at least I learned today, that the OPEB data is the same as the pension valuation data. And I'm not sure anybody on the board understood that in February because there's no reference to it, because I'll just quote that what Joe says is the PBA would also request that the data file that's been given to the actuary for the OPEB calculation that we would like a copy also. And so, in fact, that is the same data. I do not believe that that understanding was, that the board understood that until today. And so I don't believe that that's a past practice. Now, second issue is regarding the use of the data. Now, Joe, in your email of December 8th, 2016, 6:01 p.m., you say, in sum, we are entitled to the information that we are requesting, not only so that we may discharge our duties as trustees, but in aid of collective bargaining and under FOIL. And so I asked you directly earlier, are you committing to only use this information in your role as trustee? And you didn't answer the question, but you do answer the question in this email, that you're looking for the information not only in your role as a trustee, but in aid of collective bargaining. So is that correct? Or are you saying something different?
As I've stated, a lot of this information, to the extent that you have it, you understand it, it colors your decision throughout your duties in my organization as a treasurer and also as a collective bargaining agent, as also someone who advocates on behalf of his members. So to the extent that I have a full understanding of what this data means, I can't tell you, oh, it won't color my understanding when I'm sitting at the collective bargaining table with the city. And I think it's wrong for me to be held to a standard to say, I can't utilize what I know as a result of this information and in collective bargaining or elsewhere throughout my duties. That's not the purpose of that here. The purpose of this request, is so that I have information with regards to my duties as a fiduciary. I'm asked to vote on many things here, and I think I have to have a full understanding of that. To the extent that the valuation data is utilized to come up with benefits, to come up with calculations that are later on going to be requested of this board to vote on, I think I should have that full understanding.
Well, now I'm going to quote from the Law Department's response to your, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. It's attorney-client, I'm not supposed to quote.
And I believe there's also some information that we've had that was also not part of the record, that was also off the record when we had conversations with regard to some of this, which won't have a transcript.
Can I ask a quick question? Kevin, when union members request information, has anybody from PPF asked them specifically what they're going to use the information for in the past that you've been here? To your knowledge?
Not that I can recall.
No, that's what I want.
Yeah, okay. Look, I continue to object to this, to complying with this request. And so, I don't actually know what the right procedure is to, for PPF to address it, but, I'm registering my objection to releasing the pension valuation data file to PBA.
As I said, the past practice has always been to accommodate the trustees, but I've never been faced with an objection. And so I don't want to commit to an answer right now. I'd like to take a little bit of time and figure out how I'm going to proceed.
Well, not a problem. We'll wait until we get an answer from you.
Okay.
A table? Or?
I don't want to table it. I'd like to get an answer as soon as possible. So I'm sure you're going to get an answer and you'll get to all the trustees.
Yes.
And if it's something that's going to be more involved other than us getting the information, then I'm still reserving the right to do other things that we may have to do in order to get the information.
All right, so Joe, are you saying you'd like to table it because it has to be a trustee?
No, I believe Kevin is tabling it so he could get the answer.
But he's not a trustee, that's what I'm saying.
No.
It's your resolution.
To the extent that Kevin needs a certain amount of time to get an answer, whether a trustee can override another trustee to get information here, that's something else on a request that has normally been approved, not approved, but provided on information. I guess I'll give him that requisite time to get the information.
Okay. All right, so we're considering that a table.
Okay.
At the request of the PBA, based on the comments of the executive director, in that he needs more time to research this.
Okay.
All right, so move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right.
Thank you.
Merry
Happy
Christmas,
holidays to
everybody.
everybody.